Captain Sarah Chen had been missing for 7 years. Her F-22 Raptor had vanished over the Pacific Ocean during a routine training mission, leaving behind only scattered debris and unanswered questions. The military declared her dead after months of searching empty waters. Her family held a funeral with an empty casket. The world moved on. But Sarah Chen was very much alive. She stood on the deck of a small fishing boat, her eyes scanning the horizon as the familiar coastline of California came into view. Her once pristine military uniform was now weathered and patched, her face bearing scars from years of survival in a place that shouldn't exist. The salty wind whipped through her hair as she gripped the radio in her trembling hands. The fisherman who had found her floating on a makeshift raft 3 days ago spoke only broken English, but his kindness needed no translation. He had pulled her aboard his vessel without question, sharing his food and water with this strange woman who claimed to be a lost American pilot. Now as they approached the harbor, Sarah knew her real journey was just beginning. Her fingers found the small device hidden in her jacket pocket. It was smooth and warm to the touch, humming with an energy that seemed impossible. The beings who had taken her called it a key, and they had made it very clear that Earth's survival depended on her delivering it to the right people. But after 7 years of isolation, Sarah wasn't even sure who the right people were anymore. The fishing boat docked at a small marina in Monterey. Sarah thanked the fisherman in his native language, a skill she had picked up during her time away. As her boots touched solid ground for the first time in years, she felt the weight of her mission settling on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. She needed to contact the military, but she also needed to be careful. The beings had warned her that not everyone could be trusted. There were people on Earth who had been working with hostile forces, people who would kill to get their hands on the device she carried. Sarah had to find Colonel Marcus Webb, her former commanding officer, but she had no idea if he was still alive or if he could even be trusted. Walking through the small coastal town, Sarah felt like a ghost returning to the world of the living. Everything looked familiar yet different. The cars were sleeker, the phones people carried were thinner, and there were more cameras everywhere. She realized that 7 years was a long time in human terms, even if it had felt like a lifetime in the place where she had been held. She found a payphone outside a gas station, one of the few remaining relics from her time. With shaking hands, she dialed a number she had memorized long ago, hoping it would still work. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times before a gruff voice answered. "Webb. Marcus, it's Sarah Chen." The silence on the other end stretched for what felt like an eternity. Sarah could hear the colonel's breathing, heavy and disbelieving. "Sarah Chen is dead," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "No, Marcus. I'm very much alive, and I need your help. The world is in danger, and I'm the only one who can stop it." Another pause. "Where are you?" "Monterey. But Marcus, we can't talk over the phone. They might be listening. Do you remember the place where we used to get coffee before dawn flights? Ruby's Diner. Highway 101. Meet me there in 2 hours. And Marcus, come alone. Trust no one else, not even your own people. Lives depend on it." Sarah hung up the phone and began walking toward the highway. She had 2 hours to figure out how to convince her former commanding officer that she had been held prisoner by an alien civilization, that Earth was about to face an invasion, and that she carried the only weapon capable of stopping it. As she walked, Sarah thought about the beings who had taken her. They called themselves the Guardians, and they had been watching Earth for centuries. They were not the enemy, they had explained to her during her captivity. The real enemy was coming. A race of conquerors who destroyed worlds for their resources. The Guardians had tried to stop them before and failed. Earth was their last hope, and Sarah was humanity's last hope. The device in her pocket grew warmer as if responding to her thoughts. The Guardians had spent years preparing her, teaching her languages she had never heard, showing her technologies that defied human understanding, and training her to use the key when the time came. But they had also warned her that the enemy had allies on Earth, humans who had been promised power and survival in exchange for their cooperation. Sarah reached the diner just as the sun was setting. Through the windows, she could see Colonel Webb sitting in a corner booth, his hair grayer than she remembered, but his posture still military straight. He was alone as she had requested, but she noticed his hand resting near his sidearm. Taking a deep breath, Sarah pushed open the diner door. The bell chimed softly and Webb's head snapped up. For a moment, they simply stared at each other across the room. Then recognition dawned in his eyes, followed immediately by disbelief and something that might have been fear. Sarah walked slowly to his table and slid into the seat across from him. Up close, she could see the lines that 7 years had etched into his face, the weight of command and loss that had settled into his features. "Hello, Marcus," she said softly. He reached out with a trembling hand and touched her face as if confirming she was real. "My God, Sarah, where have you been? What happened to you?" Sarah glanced around the nearly empty diner, then leaned forward. "What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but you need to believe me. The fate of every person on this planet depends on it." Webb nodded slowly. "I'm listening. I was taken, Marcus. Not by any human government or terrorist organization, by beings from another world. And they sent me back because something terrible is coming, something that will end humanity unless we act now." Colonel Webb's coffee cup sat untouched on the table as Sarah finished her story. His face had gone through a series of expressions during her explanation, from disbelief to concern to what she could only describe as grim acceptance. Years of military service had taught him to consider all possibilities, no matter how far-fetched they seemed. "Show me the device," he said quietly. Sarah hesitated, then pulled the smooth object from her pocket. It was about the size of a smartphone, but seemed to be made of a material that shifted between metal and crystal, depending on how the light hit it. As soon as it touched the table, it began to glow with a soft blue light. Webb leaned back instinctively. "Jesus Christ, Sarah, what is that thing?" The Guardians called it a resonance key. It's designed to interface with Earth's magnetic field and create a shield that will protect our planet from the invasion fleet. But it has to be activated from a specific location at a precise time, or it won't work. "And where is this location?" "Area 51. There's technology there that the government doesn't even know about, hidden deep underground. The Guardians helped build it decades ago, preparing for this day. But Marcus, we have a problem. The enemy has been planning this invasion for years, and they have human allies. People in high positions who have been promised survival in exchange for their cooperation." Webb rubbed his forehead, processing the information. "How do you know who to trust?" "I don't. That's why I called you. The Guardians told me that you were clean, that you've never been approached by the enemy's agents. But they also warned me that the corruption goes all the way to the top. Pentagon officials, senators, maybe even people in the White House." The colonel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression darkened. "We have a problem. That's General Morrison's office. They want to see me immediately." "They know you're back, Sarah." Sarah's blood ran cold. "How is that possible? I only called you 2 hours ago. The phones are monitored. All of them. If they know you're alive, they know you're here." Webb stood up quickly. "We need to go, now." As they headed for the exit, Sarah noticed a black SUV pulling into the parking lot. Then another. "Too late," she whispered. Webb grabbed her arm. "Back door, kitchen." They rushed through the diner, past startled waitresses and confused customers. The cook shouted at them as they burst through the kitchen, but Webb flashed his military ID and kept moving. The back door led to an alley behind the building. "My car is 2 blocks away," Webb said, breathing hard. "Can you run?" Sarah almost laughed. After 7 years of surviving in an alien environment, running 2 blocks was nothing. "Lead the way." They sprinted through back alleys and side streets, the sound of car engines and shouting voices growing louder behind them. Webb's car was an old pickup truck. Nothing fancy but reliable. They jumped in just as the first black SUV rounded the corner at the end of the street. "Hold on," Webb said, gunning the engine. The truck roared to life and they sped off into the night. Sarah watched the side mirror as more vehicles joined the chase. Who are they? FBI? CIA? Could be anyone. The corruption runs deep, just like you said. We need to get somewhere safe where we can think and plan. There is no safe place, Marcus. The enemy's allies have had years to infiltrate every agency, every organization. They know we're here, and they won't stop until they have the key. Webb turned sharply onto a mountain road. "I know a place. An old military installation that was decommissioned years ago. It's off the grid, no electronic surveillance. We can regroup there." As they climbed higher into the mountains, Sarah pulled out the resonance key again. It was pulsing more rapidly now, and she could feel warmth spreading through her hands. "It's reacting to something," she said. "What do you think it means?" The Guardian said it would become more active as the invasion fleet got closer. "They're coming, Marcus. Maybe days, maybe hours. The truck's headlights cut through the darkness as they wound up the narrow mountain road. Behind them, the lights of their pursuers were falling back, unable to match Webb's knowledge of the terrain. But Sarah knew this was only a temporary reprieve. They reached the abandoned facility just after midnight. It was a cluster of concrete buildings surrounded by rusted fences and warning signs. Webb produced a key from his pocket and opened a gate that looked like it hadn't been used in years. "How do you have access to this place?" Sarah asked. "Sometimes old soldiers need places to disappear," Webb replied cryptically. "I've been maintaining this facility on my own time, just in case the day came when I needed somewhere the government couldn't find me." Inside the main building, Webb flipped a switch and emergency lighting flickered on. The place was stocked with food, water, and communication equipment. It was clear that Webb had been preparing for something like this for a long time. "You suspected something was wrong," Sarah observed. "Over the past few years, I've seen too many good people disappear or die under suspicious circumstances. Pilots who asked too many questions about UFO sightings, scientists who were working on classified energy projects, intelligence officers who got too close to certain truths. I started to realize that there was a pattern, a deliberate effort to silence anyone who might interfere with some larger plan." Sarah sat down heavily in a chair. The weight of her mission was becoming more real by the hour. "The Guardians told me that the enemy has been preparing for decades. They've been slowly eliminating anyone who might pose a threat to their invasion plans, while simultaneously recruiting human allies with promises of power and survival." Webb pulled up a chair across from her. "Tell me more about this invasion fleet. What exactly are we up against? Ships the size of cities, weapons that can destroy entire continents in minutes, and soldiers that are bred for nothing but warfare and conquest. They've destroyed dozens of civilizations across the galaxy. Earth would just be another resource to strip mine." The resonance key in Sarah's hands pulsed brighter, and suddenly the room filled with a low humming sound. Both Sarah and Webb looked around in alarm. "It's starting," Sarah whispered. "They're entering our solar system." Outside, the night sky began to flicker with strange lights. At first, they looked like shooting stars, but they were moving in formation in patterns that no natural phenomenon could explain. Webb grabbed a pair of binoculars from a shelf and rushed to the window. "My God," he breathed. "There are dozens of them, maybe hundreds." Sarah joined him at the window, the resonance key now glowing so brightly that it hurt to look at directly. "We're out of time. We need to get to Area 51 now before they fully enter Earth's atmosphere. That's over 400 miles from here, and by now every agency in the government will be looking for us. Then we better find another way." The morning sun revealed a world in chaos. Webb's radio crackled with emergency broadcasts as reports flooded in from across the globe. Strange objects in the sky, communication blackouts, and military bases going dark one by one. The invasion had begun in earnest, and humanity was woefully unprepared. Sarah studied a map spread across the table while the resonance key pulsed steadily beside her. "We can't take the highways. They'll have every route to Nevada covered by now." Webb looked up from his radio equipment. "I might have an idea. There's an old friend of mine, retired Air Force, who owns a crop dusting service about 50 miles from here. Jack Morrison, no relation to the general. If anyone can get us to Nevada without being detected, it's him. Can we trust him? Jack saved my life in Afghanistan. If he's been corrupted, then there's no one left to trust in this world." They packed quickly, taking only essential supplies. The resonance key went into a shielded bag that Webb had produced from his emergency gear. According to Sarah, the device's energy signature could be tracked if it was exposed for too long. The drive to Jack Morrison's airstrip took them through back roads and rural highways. They passed several military convoys heading in the opposite direction, and Webb noted grimly that many of the soldiers looked confused and frightened. The official story was that this was a massive training exercise, but even the troops on the ground weren't buying it. Jack Morrison was exactly what Sarah had expected from an old Air Force pilot turned crop duster. Weathered, tough, and suspicious of anyone in uniform. He met them at the gate to his property with a shotgun in his hands and a scowl on his face. "Marcus Webb," he said, lowering the weapon slightly. "Haven't seen you in years. What brings you to my little corner of nowhere, especially with the world going crazy like it is?" Webb gestured to Sarah. Jack, meet Captain Sarah Chen. She's the pilot who went missing 7 years ago. Jack's eyes widened. The one who disappeared over the Pacific? Hell, I thought you were dead. So did everyone else, Sarah replied. But I'm back, and I need your help. We need to get to Nevada, and we can't use normal channels. Jack studied her for a long moment, then nodded toward his hangar. Come on, let's talk inside where there aren't any satellites watching. The hangar housed 2 aircraft, an old Cessna that had seen better days, and a beautifully maintained P-51 Mustang from World War II. Jack noticed Sarah's appreciative glance at the fighter plane. That was my grandfather's bird, he said with pride. Flew it in the Pacific Theater. Still runs like a dream, and it's got enough range to get you where you need to go. Webb looked skeptical. Jack, that's a museum piece. Are you sure it can handle a flight like this? This old girl has more life left in her than most modern planes. Plus, she's not in any computer system, which means they can't track her electronically. But before I agree to anything, I need to know what this is really about. Sarah and Webb exchanged glances. Time was running short, and they needed Jack's help. Sarah made the decision to trust him with the truth. She pulled out the resonance key and set it on Jack's workbench. The moment it touched the metal surface, the entire hangar filled with a soft humming sound, and every piece of electronic equipment in the building began to flicker. Sweet Jesus, Jack whispered, backing away from the device. What is that thing? It's the key to saving humanity, Sarah said simply. And I need to get it to Area 51 before those ships up there start landing. Jack was quiet for several minutes, staring at the glowing device. Finally, he walked over to the P-51 and began his pre-flight inspection. Fuel her up, Marcus. We leave in 20 minutes. As Webb began refueling the aircraft, Jack pulled Sarah aside. I've been seeing things in the sky for weeks now. Things that don't belong there. The government keeps saying it's weather balloons or military tests, but I've been flying for 40 years, and I know what belongs in the sky and what doesn't. You're not crazy, Jack. Those ships are real, and they're not from this world. The beings piloting them have conquered dozens of planets, and Earth is next on their list. Jack nodded grimly. Then we better make sure that thing gets where it needs to go. The P-51 roared to life with a sound that Sarah found oddly comforting. After 7 years away from Earth, the familiar growl of a piston engine was like a welcome home song. Jack guided the aircraft out of the hangar and onto the small runway. Keep it low and follow the terrain, Webb advised from the backseat. Radar coverage is thinner down in the weeds. Don't teach your grandmother to suck eggs, Jack replied with a grin. I've been dodging radar since before you were born. They took off just as Sarah's watch showed noon. The flight to Nevada would take them over some of the most desolate terrain in the American West, which was exactly what they needed. The fewer people around to report their passage, the better. As they flew west, Sarah watched the sky anxiously. The alien ships were still too high to be easily visible, but she could feel them up there. The resonance key in her lap was pulsing, faster now, and she could sense a growing tension in the air itself, as if the planet was holding its breath. 2 hours into the flight, Webb spotted the first interceptor aircraft on the horizon. We've got company, he announced. F-16s heading our way. Jack banked sharply to the right, diving toward a canyon system below. Hold on. This old bird still remembers how to dance. The P-51 screamed down into the canyon at speeds that would have been suicide for a less experienced pilot. The F-16s followed, but their advantage in speed and technology was negated by the tight confines of the rock walls. They're trying to force us to land, Webb observed, watching the jets maneuver above them. They're not shooting. That's because they want the device intact, Sarah said. The human allies know how important it is. Jack pulled the P-51 into a series of turns that would have made his grandfather proud. The old fighter plane responded, like it was born for this kind of flying, weaving through the canyon system with an agility that the modern jets couldn't match. After 20 minutes of cat and mouse, the F-16s broke off their pursuit. They had reached the limit of their fuel, and Jack had outflown them in terrain that favored experience over technology. That was fun, Jack said, pulling the aircraft back up to cruising altitude. Haven't had a dogfight since the old days. Area 51 is still 2 hours away. Webb warned. They'll have more intercepts waiting for us. Sarah looked down at the resonance key. It was glowing so brightly now that she had to shield her eyes. We don't have 2 hours, she said urgently. Look at the sky. Above them, the blue of the afternoon sky was beginning to shimmer and distort. The alien fleet was beginning to break through Earth's atmosphere, and when they did, the invasion would begin in earnest. Then we better fly faster, Jack said, pushing the throttles forward. The P-51 responded with a surge of power that pressed them back into their seats. The landscape of Nevada stretched endlessly below them as Jack pushed the P-51 to its limits. The old fighter plane was holding together beautifully, but Sarah could see the strain on the engine gauges. They were asking a lot from a machine that was built over 70 years ago. Area 51 is just ahead, Webb announced, pointing to a cluster of buildings barely visible in the desert haze. But we've got a problem. Look at all those aircraft. The secret base was crawling with activity. Dozens of jets circled overhead while helicopters moved in coordinated patterns around the perimeter. It looked more like a war zone than a research facility. They're expecting us, Sarah said grimly. The question is whether those are friendlies trying to protect the base or hostiles trying to keep us out. Jack brought the P-51 down to just above ground level, using the terrain to mask their approach. Only one way to find out. Sarah, you still remember how to fly one of these old birds? What are you thinking? I'm thinking you need to get that device to wherever it needs to go, and that means I need to create a distraction. This old plane has one more fight left in her. Webb leaned forward from the back seat. Jack, that's suicide. There are at least 20 modern fighters up there. Maybe, but I've got something they don't have. I've got nothing left to lose, and I know this desert better than anyone. Plus, I'd rather go down fighting than watch the world end. As they approached the outer perimeter of Area 51, Sarah spotted something that made her heart skip. A group of aircraft was breaking away from the main formation and heading directly toward them. But these weren't military jets. They were sleek silver craft that moved with impossible grace and speed. Guardian ships, she breathed. They're here. The alien vessels engaged the human aircraft in a stunning display of aerial combat. The Guardian ships moved like liquid mercury, impossible to track or target. Within minutes, half of the circling jets had been disabled and forced to land. Their electronics scrambled by some kind of energy weapon. Looks like your friends are clearing the way, Jack observed. Sarah shook her head. The Guardians won't interfere directly with the invasion. They're just making sure I can complete my mission. After that, we're on our own. Jack brought the P-51 in for a landing on Area 51's main runway. As soon as the wheels touched down, military personnel surrounded the aircraft. But instead of pointing weapons at them, they were forming a protective perimeter. A figure in an Air Force uniform approached the plane as they climbed out. Sarah recognized him immediately. General Harrison, one of the few Pentagon officials that the Guardians had confirmed was not corrupted. Captain Chen, he said, extending his hand. Welcome back. We've been waiting for you. You know why I'm here? We've known about the Guardian presence for decades. A small group of us have been preparing for this day, keeping the secret safe from those who would use it for their own purposes. The device you carry is the final piece of a defense system that was built in collaboration with the Guardians 50 years ago. General Harrison led them across the base toward a nondescript building. The surface installations are just a cover. The real work happens underground, in levels that don't exist on any official blueprints. They entered an elevator that descended far deeper than should have been possible. When the doors opened, Sarah found herself in a vast underground complex that looked like something from a science fiction movie. The walls were lined with technology that was clearly not of human origin, pulsing with the same energy signature as the resonance key. This is incredible, Webb whispered. It's been under construction for 5 decades, General Harrison explained. A joint project between the Guardians and a select group of humans who knew this day would come. But it was never completed. The Guardians couldn't provide the final activation key without risking it falling into the wrong hands. Sarah pulled the resonance key from her bag. The moment it was exposed to the air, every piece of Guardian technology in the complex began to hum and glow. Where does it need to go? The central chamber. But Captain, you should know that activating the planetary defense system will require a tremendous amount of energy. The person who initiates the sequence may not survive the process. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The Guardians didn't mention that. They probably didn't want to influence your decision. The choice has to be freely made, or the system won't accept the activation. They walked through corridors lined with impossible technology, passing chambers filled with devices that Sarah couldn't even begin to understand. Finally, they reached a circular room dominated by a crystalline structure that rose from floor to ceiling. The resonance amplifier, General Harrison explained. It will take the energy from your key and broadcast it through the Earth's magnetic field, creating a shield that will repel the invasion fleet. Sarah approached the crystalline structure and saw that there was a slot perfectly shaped for the resonance key. But there was also a platform beside it, clearly designed for a human operator. I have to stay here and maintain the connection manually, she realized. Webb stepped forward. Sarah, there has to be another way. There isn't, she said softly. This is why the Guardians chose me. They needed someone who would be willing to sacrifice everything to save Earth. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the complex. General Harrison grabbed a communication device from the wall. What's the situation? General, the alien ships are beginning their final approach. We're detecting massive energy buildups in their weapon systems. They'll be in firing range in less than 10 minutes. Sarah looked at the resonance key in her hands, then at the faces of her friends around her. 7 years ago, she had been a simple military pilot. Now she held the fate of humanity in her hands. There's something else, she said quietly. The Guardians told me that if the defense system works, if we successfully repel this invasion, Earth will be invited to join the galactic community. Humanity will no longer be alone in the universe. And if it doesn't work? Webb asked. Sarah inserted the resonance key into the crystalline structure. Immediately, the entire chamber filled with blinding light and a sound like the heartbeat of the planet itself. If it doesn't work, none of us will be alive to worry about it. She stepped onto the platform beside the amplifier. As soon as her feet touched the surface, she felt energy coursing through her body. It was painful but also exhilarating, as if she was becoming one with the planet itself. Above ground, the sky was filled with alien ships, their weapons charging for the assault that would end human civilization. But deep beneath the Nevada desert, Sarah Chen prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice to ensure that Earth would survive to see another dawn. Energy flowed through Sarah's body like liquid fire as she maintained her connection with the resonance amplifier. Every nerve ending screamed in protest, but she held on, feeling the planet's magnetic field responding to the Guardian technology. Through the crystalline structure, she could sense the alien fleet above, their massive ships preparing to unleash destruction on an unsuspecting world. Planetary shield at 30%, a technician called out from a control station. Energy levels holding steady. General Harrison watched the readings with growing concern. Captain, your vital signs are becoming critical. How much longer can you maintain the connection? Sarah gritted her teeth against the pain. As long as it takes. How close are the ships? They're entering the upper atmosphere now. Our satellites show at least 200 vessels, each one the size of a small city. They're forming attack formations over major population centers. Through the energy connection, Sarah could feel the alien commander's confidence. They had done this countless times before, reducing proud civilizations to ash and rubble. Earth would be just another conquered world, its resources stripped away to fuel their endless expansion across the galaxy. But as the planetary shield strengthened, Sarah sensed something else. Confusion among the alien fleet. Their instruments were detecting an energy signature that shouldn't exist on a primitive world like Earth. For the first time in their long campaign of conquest, they were encountering something unexpected. Shield at 60%, the technician announced. The magnetic field is stabilizing. Webb leaned over the control station, monitoring Sarah's condition. Her neural activity is off the charts. The connection is putting tremendous strain on her brain. I can handle it, Sarah said through clenched teeth. But privately, she was beginning to doubt that. The energy flowing through her was unlike anything she had experienced during her time with the Guardians. It felt like she was trying to channel the power of a star through her human nervous system. Above ground, the first alien weapons began to fire. Beams of coherent energy lanced down from the massive ships, targeting military installations and government facilities. But as the beam struck the upper atmosphere, they encountered the developing planetary shield and scattered harmlessly into space. It's working, General Harrison shouted. The shield is deflecting their weapons. But the alien fleet wasn't giving up easily. The ship commanders quickly adapted their strategy, concentrating their fire on single points in the shield, trying to overwhelm the defense with focused attacks. Sarah felt each assault like a physical blow, the shield's energy feedback channeling directly through her nervous system. Shield integrity down to 40%, the technician warned. They're learning how to counter our defenses. Sarah closed her eyes and reached deeper into the connection with the amplifier. The Guardians had prepared her for this moment, teaching her to merge her consciousness with their technology, but doing so meant surrendering her human identity, becoming something more than human but also less. As she opened herself fully to the energy flow, Sarah felt her awareness expanding beyond the underground chamber. She could sense every living thing on Earth, from the smallest insect to the great whales in the deepest oceans. All of humanity's hopes and dreams, fears and aspirations flowed through her consciousness like a river of emotion. Shield at 90%, the technician called out. Whatever you're doing, it's working. But the expanded awareness came with a terrible cost. Sarah could feel her human memories beginning to fade, replaced by vast knowledge from the Guardian collective. She was becoming something beyond human understanding, a bridge between two forms of consciousness. Webb noticed the change immediately. Sarah, your brain patterns are completely different. You're losing yourself. No, she whispered, her voice now carrying harmonics that shouldn't exist in human speech. I'm becoming what Earth needs me to be. The alien fleet, faced with a fully powered planetary shield, began to retreat. But their commander had one final gambit. If they couldn't destroy Earth's defenses from outside the atmosphere, they would land troops and attack the shield generator directly. General, we're detecting landing craft breaking away from the main fleet, a communications officer announced. They're heading for our location. General Harrison activated the base's defense systems, but everyone knew that conventional weapons would be useless against advanced alien technology. The underground complex began to shake as the first alien ships touched down on the surface above. How long until the shield is permanent? Webb asked. At current power levels, another 10 minutes, the technician replied. But Captain Chen's vital signs are becoming erratic. I don't think she can maintain the connection much longer. Sarah heard their words as if from a great distance. Her consciousness was now spread across the entire planet, feeling the weight of 7 billion human lives depending on her success. She could sense the alien soldiers moving through the upper levels of the facility, their weapons cutting through steel and concrete like paper. But she could also sense something else. The Guardian ships that had helped them reach Area 51 were not retreating. They were moving into position around Earth, preparing for something that even Sarah's expanded awareness couldn't fully comprehend. The Guardians, she said, her voice now barely recognizable as human. They're not just observers. They're preparing to make Earth the center of resistance against the invasion force. General Harrison looked up from his tactical display. What do you mean? This isn't just about saving Earth. If we succeed, if the planetary shield holds, Earth becomes a symbol for every world that has suffered under alien conquest. A proof that resistance is possible. The energy connection pulsed stronger, and Sarah felt the final barriers between her consciousness and the Guardian collective beginning to dissolve. She was no longer just Sarah Chen, the lost aviator. She was becoming something new. A fusion of human determination and Guardian wisdom. Shield at 98%, the technician announced. Almost there. But at that moment, alien soldiers burst into the central chamber. Their weapons were unlike anything in human arsenals, firing beams of pure energy that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. General Harrison and his men returned fire, but their bullets passed harmlessly through the aliens' energy shields. Webb threw himself in front of one of the alien weapons, taking a blast meant for Sarah. He collapsed to the floor, his body beginning to dissolve at the point of impact. Marcus, Sarah screamed, her human emotions breaking through the Guardian consciousness. The surge of emotion triggered something unexpected in the resonance amplifier. The crystalline structure blazed with light so intense that the alien soldiers were forced to shield their eyes. When the light faded, they found themselves facing something that defied their understanding. Sarah Chen was no longer entirely human. Energy crackled around her form like lightning, and her eyes glowed with the same light as the Guardian technology. She had become something new, something unprecedented in the galaxy's long history of conquest and resistance. You want to destroy Earth? she said, her voice carrying the power of the planet itself. Then you'll have to go through me. The alien soldiers had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had never encountered anything like the being that Sarah Chen had become. Energy flowed around her like a living thing, and when she moved, reality itself seemed to bend and shift in response. The transformation had cost her humanity, but it had given her something far more powerful. Impossible, the lead alien warrior hissed in a voice like grinding metal. No primitive species can access Guardian consciousness directly. Sarah smiled, and the expression was both human and utterly alien. Humans aren't as primitive as you think. We have something your kind lost long ago. We have hope. She raised her hand, and the alien soldiers found themselves frozen in place by an energy field that made their own technology look like primitive tools. With her expanded consciousness, Sarah could see through their eyes, feel their thoughts, understand the vast empire they served. You've been conquering worlds for 1,000 years, she said, her voice echoing through dimensions that human ears couldn't normally perceive. Always taking, never giving. Never understanding that true strength comes from connection, not domination. Webb stirred on the floor where he had fallen. The alien weapon's energy had damaged his body, but Sarah's transformation had somehow stabilized his condition. "Sarah," he whispered, "are you still in there?" She looked down at him with eyes that held the wisdom of the Guardians and the compassion of humanity. "I'm still here, Marcus, but I'm also something more now. Something that Earth needs me to be." The resonance amplifier pulsed with final power, and suddenly every human on the planet could feel it. A warm sensation spread through their minds, a feeling of connection and protection that told them they were no longer alone in the universe. The planetary shield was complete and Earth was safe from external attack, but the battle wasn't over. Through her connection to the Guardian network, Sarah could sense the alien commander's rage as his invasion plans crumbled. The massive fleet in orbit was preparing to retreat, but not before delivering one final devastating blow. "They're charging their planet killer," she announced, "a weapon designed to crack worlds open like eggs. The shield won't stop something that powerful." General Harrison's face went pale. "How long do we have?" 5 minutes, maybe less." Sarah closed her eyes and reached out through the Guardian network, feeling for something that had been hinted at during her captivity, but never fully explained. If Earth was to survive, she needed to access not just Guardian technology, but Guardian authority. "There's a way," she said suddenly. "But it means challenging the alien empire directly, making Earth a target for their entire war machine." "What do you mean?" Sarah stepped away from the resonance amplifier, her body still crackling with energy. "The Guardians aren't just observers or protectors. They're the remnants of the first civilization to successfully resist the alien conquest. They've been waiting for a world that could stand with them, a species that could prove that conquest isn't inevitable." Through the facility's damaged ceiling, they could see the alien fleet's command ship growing brighter as its planet-killing weapon charged to full power. In 4 minutes, Earth would be nothing but scattered debris floating in space. "I can stop them," Sarah continued, "but it means transforming this entire planet into something new, making Earth the center of galactic resistance, changing humanity forever." Webb struggled to his feet, supported by General Harrison. "What would happen to us?" "To humanity, you would become something more than human, but still essentially who you are. Think of it as evolution, accelerated by Guardian technology. Every human would gain the ability to connect with the galactic consciousness, to share knowledge and experience across vast distances." "And the cost?" Sarah's expression grew sad. "Earth would no longer be hidden. Every enemy of the Guardians would know where to find us. We would be at war with half the galaxy for generations to come." The alien weapon's charging cycle was almost complete. Through her enhanced senses, Sarah could feel the massive energies building in the command ship's core. In 2 minutes the beam would fire, and Earth would die. General Harrison looked around the chamber at his remaining personnel, then back at Sarah. "Do it. Humanity has always been at its best when fighting for something greater than ourselves." Sarah nodded and placed her hands back on the resonance amplifier, but this time, instead of channeling energy into Earth's magnetic field, she opened a connection to every Guardian ship in the solar system. The collective consciousness of an entire civilization flowed through her, and she felt their approval of her choice. The transformation began with the underground facility itself. Guardian technology integrated with human systems, creating hybrid devices that were more powerful than either civilization could have built alone. The change spread upward through the rock and soil, reaching the surface just as the alien planet killer fired. The beam struck Earth's surface and simply disappeared, absorbed by a planetary consciousness that was now capable of processing and redirecting such massive energies. The absorbed power flowed back through Sarah and out into space, striking the alien command ship with its own weapons energy amplified 100-fold. The massive vessel exploded in a fireball visible from Earth's surface, and the remaining ships of the invasion fleet fled in panic. They had never encountered a world capable of turning their own weapons against them. But the real change was happening to humanity itself. Across the globe, every human being felt a moment of perfect clarity as their consciousness expanded beyond individual awareness. They could suddenly sense the thoughts and emotions of others, not intrusively but as a gentle background presence that confirmed they were part of something larger. Children stopped crying as they felt their parents' love directly. Soldiers on battlefields laid down their weapons as they experienced their enemy's humanity. World leaders found themselves unable to maintain the lies and deceptions that had driven conflicts for generations. "It's beautiful," Webb whispered, tears streaming down his face as he felt the unified consciousness of his entire species for the first time. Sarah stepped away from the amplifier, her transformation complete. She looked human again, but her eyes held depths that hadn't existed before. "The Guardian Network spans thousands of worlds now," she said. "Earth is the newest member, but also the most important. Humans have something the other species lost during their transformations. You kept your individuality, your creativity, your stubborn refusal to give up." General Harrison was monitoring communications from around the globe. "The changes are happening everywhere. No more wars, no more hatred. It's like humanity finally grew up all at once." "Growing up was exactly what needed to happen," Sarah confirmed. "The alien empire conquers children. They've never known how to deal with adults." Through the damaged ceiling, they could see Guardian ships descending from orbit, no longer hiding their presence. First contact was happening not as an invasion or a revelation, but as a reunion between old friends. Jack Morrison's voice crackled over the radio. "Sarah, you beautiful crazy woman, what did you just do to the world?" Sarah laughed, and the sound held both human joy and Guardian wisdom. "I saved it, Jack. I saved it by helping it save itself." Outside, the first Guardian ambassador was landing on Earth's soil. The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic citizenship had begun, and somewhere in space, fleeing alien warships carried word to their masters that there was a new power in the galaxy, one that turned conquest into liberation and weapons into tools of protection. Earth had found its place among the stars, not as subjects or conquerors, but as something entirely new. And Sarah Chen, the lost aviator who had vanished 7 years ago, had become the bridge between what humanity was and what it was destined to become.